in such public campaign, the manifesto of 1848 should be heralded as the founding date for communism, and Karl Marx falsely proclaimed as its author. What this is saying is that we are taught in school that communism is directly caused by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels writing the Communist Manifesto. In 1848, Communist Manifesto was written by Karl Marx. No such a thing. History tells you that it was written, the Communist Manifesto was written in 1776 in Europe by an order of Freemasonry called the Illuminati. And it wasn't until 1848 that they decided, well, we better tell everybody that somebody else did it. So we'll say Karl Marx came up with it in 1848. No way. What we call communism is nothing more than a plan by the banking elements in England and America to divide the world between two divisions, to divide the world between the East and the West, so that you can have war. You've got to have war, chaos, before you can bring control. That's why the United States financed Adolf Hitler. The United States financed the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is called the Soviet Union, not because it's a union of states, it's because it was a unionized under International Labor Organization, the ILO, which was originally called the IWW, the International Workers of the World, which because they wanted to unionize all labor. Painters Union, you know, the Carpenters Union, the Soviet Union, it's unionizing labor. And once you can unionize labor, get control over monetary and labor systems, now you can have them war with each other, and you've got control over them. These people are very, very smart. They've got this stuff together. And here's George Washington's, the writings of George Washington from the U.S. government printing office, from original manuscripts. Here George Washington says, I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati. It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread in the United States, see, on the Masons and the Illuminati. In the United States, on the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied with this fact than I am. So he's saying, you don't have to tell me about the Illuminati and what they're doing in New York. I already know. Here is interesting, though. On the Masons and the Illuminati, George Washington writing said, individual Freemasons of them, in other words, he's saying in this letter to the man who wrote it, I don't believe all Freemasons in the whole world are evil. I don't think all Freemasons in the whole world are bad. But I know what you're talking about when you say that there is a secret conspiracy operating out of New York and in America and throughout the world. Nobody is more truly convinced of that than I am. Of course, there's a lot of ignorant people in Freemasonry that don't know any of this. But that individuals of them may have done it. I'm going to paraphrase this because it's an old English. Washington is saying, the idea I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first, the Illuminati, or the principles, the pernicious principles of the latter, the Jacobins, if they are susceptible to separation. But that there are individuals in the Freemasonic order who may have done this, or that the founder or instruments employed to found the democratic societies of the United States, later to become known as the Democratic Party, the founder or the instruments employed to found the Democratic Party in the United States may have had these objects in mind and actually had the separation of the people from their government in view is too evident to be questioned. What he's saying is that the Democratic Party was founded by a secret society of Freemasons that have one thing that they wanted to do, and that is divide the people from their government. Because before, under a Republican form of government, the people had total control because they were sovereigns. Under a democratic system, when you elect a Democrat, they were already had the idea of separating the people from their government. You just elect some airhead here and send him to Washington. But what you don't know is that this person is not even allowed to run for office unless he is one of them. He's not even allowed to run for Senate or for the state or for any position without being a part of this thing. So if you want to run for office, you just go out and try and see how well you can run for office without being a part of the Illuminati or the Freemasonic order of things. If you don't belong to the right club, Jack, you ain't going nowhere, period. Here's a congressional report from the congressional hearings on steps toward British Union, again, Union, steps toward British Union, a world state and international strife. I'll run that back by you again. British Union, a world state. What are you talking about, a world state? You're talking about a one world order, a world state, and international war. And on page 13, this is a very interesting document, 28 pages long. But on page 13 it says, let me call your attention to the fact that on the reverse of the Great Seal of the U.S., which appears on dollar bills, you will find the exact symbol of the British Israel World Federation movement. This symbol is also carried on literature of other organizations promoting a world government and a world religion. At the bottom of the circle surrounding the pyramid, you'll find the words Novus Ordo Seclorum. It is the new order that was advocated by Clinton Roosevelt several hundred years ago. So this is a symbol of a thing called the British Israel World Federation. It is a connection between England and America and the Masonic orders of both and how they put this thing together. That's why, I guess, again, we say that England is God's kingdom, the United Kingdom. And as a matter of fact, there's a very big difference. A lot of people don't know this. There's a very big difference between being an English and British. British comes from a Hebrew word. Brit in Hebrew means a contract or a covenant. And ish in Hebrew means man. Therefore, British means the covenant man, man of the covenant. What covenant? It's the new covenant, God's covenant for a kingdom through Christianity, through God's kingdom, the United Kingdom, the British. And the British, with America, are involved in something called British Israel Freemasonry. And all these dopes in Washington, D.C., and these conspirators in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, are nothing more than frontmen for a very powerful secret society is preparing us to accept something that's called God's kingdom. Remember, Armageddon's coming, the end of the last days, the end of the world, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormon Church, the end of the world. You better do your homework. There's something going on here. That's why we have a 51st state. Incidentally, a legal term in this country for a state is called the state of, like the state of Alabama, the state of New York, the state of Florida. State of is a legal term according to International Maritime Admiralty law. That's why we have a state of Israel. Israel's not a country, it's not a nation, it's called the state of Israel because it was set up as part of our federal system. It was set up in 1948 by the United States and England, and it was referred to under International Maritime Admiralty law as the state of Israel because it is an actual state of the federal system of America. So you better figure out why too. There's a reason for it. Here is a symbol taken from a Freemasonic book they didn't know I had, and here's the fires of revolution and trouble, anarchy, the cauldron of fire, they call it in the Freemasonry, the revolutionary trouble. And here's the pyramid with the Masonic. And down here you have three contingents or three factions of Freemasonry, always at war with each other. You have the Pope, which is incidentally, the Catholic Church is a Jewish Freemasonic movement, founded in the Middle Ages in the year 325 by Constantine. It is a Jewish Freemasonic political movement. That's why the Pope wears the little yarmulke. He wears the little yarmulke with the cardinals. They wear the tellus. All of these symbols and emblems in the Catholic Church are nothing but Jewish Freemasonry. Huh? Kabbalistic, yeah, Kabbalistic Freemasonry. You'll see, I'll give you a lot of examples of that very quickly. This represents Rome, or the Roman Freemasonic orders, and incidentally, you'll see a lot of this stuff in Godfather 3. In the movie Godfather 3 is a lot of this stuff talking about the secret societies and the Freemasons operating in the Vatican and all that kind of stuff. And, incidentally, the guy who directed those shows and put them on the Godfather series, Francis Ford Coppola. I was doing some research at the police department down at Parker Center, and in their files they have a whole file on Francis Ford Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola's father was Carmine Coppola, who was a Don in the Mafia in the city of Corleone, Italy. Huh? Corleones? That was his father. His father was a Don in the Mafia in Corleone, Italy. That's how he could make such a great movie and know so much about it. Hell, his father is the Don in Corleone. You know? So, anyway, incidentally, I think Francis Ford Coppola is great, but I mean, he's very knowledgeable. He's put stuff together, and you better figure out where he's getting all that money to make, you know, Apocalypse Now and all the, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Where's he getting the money from? I mean, where do these people get the money from? They're getting it from secret societies and fraternal orders that are the powers behind our government, okay? So here we got the Vatican, we got the Knights of Malta, and the King of England. And they're all in there working up the fires of trouble all over the world. Here's the Pope with the yarmulke. Why, I ask you, are all of the politicians and all these world leaders all on their knees to the Pope? It's not because they're Catholic. I mean, here's the Emperor of Japan, Japanese, and he's on his knees, or getting ready to. So how come these people are all on their knees to the Pope? It has nothing to do with the fact that he's Catholic. It has to do with the fact of who he represents. He represents a very powerful secret society referred to as the Knights of Malta. And in world Freemasonry, there is something we call today an unwritten code of ethics among the thieves. I mean, you may be the East Coast family and the West Coast family, but when you meet, there's a certain respect for each other. So the Eastern nations, they respect that he represents a very powerful secret society of the West. And so it's only honorable to show respect. It doesn't mean we can't have a war. It doesn't mean we can't kill each other. But this is a state affair, so we all on our knees. And these symbols here, the stripes going over the shoulders, all are Masonic emblems. They always represent who you are in the Masonic structure of things in world Freemasonry.
Is that why they killed the 30-day Pope?
That's it, exactly. That's why they killed John Kennedy, too, because the Pope, they were afraid. Freemasonry in this country was very much afraid that John Kennedy was going, the old Joe Kennedy was going to start a Catholic dynasty in America. And that's one thing they're not going to have in America, the Catholic dynasty. You can't help it once in a while a Catholic will get elected or something, but we didn't have no dynasty here. I mean, every time you turn around, Joe Kennedy had, what, 15 kids? My God, he was going to have kids galore. And he wanted to have all his sons be president, and, congressmen, senators, always going to be a Kennedy doing something every time you turn around. So somebody decided to take Kennedy out. It's interesting that Kennedy, all the stuff around Kennedy's assassination is just filled with secret societies, fraternal orders. All you need to do is see JFK and you know there's something going on here. Anyway, here you got the Knights of Malta on Nazi soldiers with Adolf Hitler. That's because Adolf Hitler was connected with the Vatican. The Vatican signed concordance with Adolf Hitler. And that's why Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and the Pope, they were the enemies of Jewish Freemasonry in America. That's why if they're going to kill a few Jews in Europe, who the hell cares? I mean, that's business, you know. That's why Hitler was killing Jews, is because the Vatican was an opposing branch of Freemasonry, which was a Gentile Roman branch of Freemasonry, which is why Rome, Mussolini of Italy, joined together with Adolf Hitler because they were trying to reestablish what is called an Aryan system of laws and science in the world as opposed to the New World Order in America. So when you see all these things happening on a world scale, they're not just happening. There's reasons for all of this stuff. You know, here's Nazi officials. They look like some of the people who run this country. They're just like it, too. And they look about as, yeah, don't they? Don't they look like governors and senators and whatever? And so here's an emblem right here. This is the Knights of Malta. They all wear the Knights of Malta symbol, Masonic Order of Malta, Roman Freemasonry. But then down here is this is the Military Order of Malta. Incidentally, when you see the round circle with the swastika was the old Aryan Hindu symbol for the sun. Like the Egyptians had Horus, well, the ancient Aryans of India had the the swastika for the sun. Incidentally, the swastika for the sun for the Aryans and the Buddhists, the broken legs went the opposite way. Hitler inverted them and went the opposite way. The Aryans had it going clockwise, which meant something spiritually in the esoteric. Hitler broke the legs and made it go backwards, which meant it's going back to the east instead of going to the west. So he was reestablishing the old Aryan empire on the ancient Eastern occultism. All of this has to do with secret societies and subversive movements. But anyway, this Knights of Malta religious emblem here on this one is interesting because when you enlarge it, I think I need to, that's pretty good. You'll see that it is the same one as the other one we showed on the before, Knights of Malta, but you'll see it's two circles. There's an outside circle and an inside circle, all right? Here it is again. Outside circle and inside circle, okay? Knights of Malta, religious Knights of Malta cross. And there it is again. But where is this at? It's in Pasadena. First Congregational Church in Pasadena. Right? It's on churches right here in Pasadena. The Knights of Malta, religious Knights of Malta symbol. So, oh, and something else you might be interested to know. On all churches you'll find a pointed arches on the doors. You go in the church with a pointed arch, and the windows are pointed arches. The pointed arches symbolize the female. It's the pointed arch of the female. And that's why the male, that's why they would never allow women to be priests in a church. Because the philosophy which gave birth to what we call Roman Catholic or Western Christian civilization was based on the female arch, and the man wears, the priest wears the robe, or the robe, which is the female dress. A robe is a female dress, and a priest wears a robe because spirituality in the ancient world, according to the ancient world, spirituality was always in the hands of female, not the males. Men were never thought to be holders of religion or spiritual creatures. They were the ones that went out and killed and raped and murdered and brought in the food. The women were the ones that nurtured the child, brought civilization to males, because if you take all males, you lose civilization. You need the female to civilize society. Yes?
The male compass right in the middle of that.
Oh yeah, compass of the male. It has to do with and that's why I said the priest represents, with the long robe, he is representing female wisdom, or something the Greeks call it Pista Sophia, female wisdom. And within the female wisdom, beneath is the male. So it all has to do with symbology. It all has to do with sex, the female, pointed arch, etc. All right, then we get up here to York Rite Freemasonry again, and here is the Masonic square, or the Masonic, the Malta, Knights of Malta cross. The cross, that's the same one the Queen was wearing, right? The Knights of Malta cross. Here it is again. Let me go back to that. Order of Knights Templars. That's why in Israel today, you see the Jews going to the Wailing Wall, and you see this in the news. They're at the Wailing Wall. And it's the wall in which they wail. They wail because of the Wailing Wall was put there. It's a very difficult story to say in a couple of words, but that's where we get Wall Street, from the Wailing Wall, the Hebrews who wail on the Wailing Wall of Wall Street. It has to do with symbolism, which goes back to Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple was the symbol and the home of what is called the Knights Templars, Knights of the Temple. That's why Steven Spielberg has the Jedi Knights, and the Empire Strikes Back and the Jedi Knight. Incidentally, according to, if you go to the library and look up the Masonic folklore, you will see that the spiritual connection between the Freemasons of the York Rite and God was a little spiritual creature they call Yoda, with little pointed ears, and he was a magician. They call him Yoda. Yoda comes from Yoda, or Judah. It has to do with Judah, Yoda, the Knights of Malta, and whatever. You know, you could make a whole study out of any of this. You could make a 3-hour lecture out of every single thing I'm saying. You could spend hours on it, but I'm just throwing all of this stuff in just to show you that there are connections that can be made. Anyway, the Knights of Malta with their Maltese cross. Here's another Knights of Malta, 33rd degree Freemason with the Knights of Malta. Okay. Here's the same one on Masters of the Universe. Right. That's what they intend to be, is Masters of the Universe. I mean, hell, they own the Earth. Now they're going for the universe, right? Now they want to go out to other stars, moon, own the whole universe. Masters of the universe. Blonde hair, Aryan. Remember Hitler with the blonde hair, Aryan. Knights of Malta, Catholic Church, kill the Jews. Hey, it's all connected. Right? Okay. You got the Knights of Malta again, and I'm drawing your attention to this strange configuration here because you'll see it again in the fire department. LA Fire Department has the Knights of Malta because the fire department, the police department, sheriff's department, mayor's department, and everybody else's department is all Masonic, the whole thing. We are in the hands of a very powerful secret society, and we call it law. Actually, it's nothing more than secret societies who have totally taken us over. And we just go along to get along because we're too ignorant and too frightened to death to do anything we did know. Yes? Yeah, on a red background. The Knights of Malta are a Gentile Roman Freemasonic order coming out of the old Roman Empire, which was the collective power of the old world of Europe, because Europe was dominated by Rome. And so the Knights of Malta is a symbol for a Masonic order coming out of the old world order of Europe, and it was called the Knights of Malta, and because it goes back to an old priesthood on the island of Malta. Malta was a symbol many, many, many years ago, over 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire. Let me think of something that's comparable. You know, there are certain places in our country that are hot spots for occultism. And in the Roman Empire, Malta, the island of Malta, was a place where you go there and those people are really off the wall out there. They got strange stuff going on there, occults and all that kind of stuff. So Malta was always a symbol for occultism in the ancient world. And so the Romans had what they call the Knights of Malta, the Knights who operate, yes? No, the Illuminati, all right, the Illuminati is a relatively new phenomena in Freemasonry. It came in 1776 with Adam Weishaupt. But what the Illuminati was merely a course correction in Freemasonry. There was the Roman world under the Roman domination of Europe, Freemasonic orders. There was the coming out of Spain, France, the coming of what is called York Rite or Scottish Rite Freemasonry, England, Spain, France, coming into America to found a new world order, but above them, above the two orders, which is the eagle with the double head, implying that both sides, both the old world order and the new world order, are being dominated by a third one. And that's what Ian Fleming in his James Bond novels was talking about, that there's a third power over the two. And it's controlling both. And that's the Illuminati. No, this is just showing the Knights of Malta symbol, which is Roman Freemasonry, but it shows how they don't mind using both sides, as long as you remember that America is a York Scottish Rite country. They don't, you know, they're symbols of Freemasonry. And what I have to do is I have to show you their works, their reference works that explain these symbols and how they connect, because they're very open with it. They explain their symbols and how they got here and what they mean and why they allow them to be used.
I think it's quite confusing, though. They're all working together for the same goal.
Yes.
Or they
No, they're all working together for the same goal. The same goal is to create chaos, to have Adolf Hitler fight the United States, have Russia fight America, have China fight. All of this stuff is being orchestrated from a higher Masonic order. Well, that's the thing that there's been a lot of conjecture on. There's been a lot of books written about that. E.M. Fleming wrote his James Bond novel. He called it Spectre. Remember, the secret petting the cat, and he's putting the West against the East all the time. And E.M. Fleming, when he was interviewed on David Frost's show, they asked him, who is this specter, this third power group that's always getting the East and the West at war? And he said, England and America and the Western world are aware that there is a third power in the world that pits the two together. And that is operating, he said, out of Switzerland. That's what I think is why Switzerland is a neutral country, because that's where the big boys live. And you don't mess with, yes, the World Bank. As a matter of fact, in Switzerland, there's a large building in one of the cities of Switzerland, and I had a big color picture of it. I don't have it on slides now. There's a large building in a big downtown city in Switzerland, and it's a round, perfectly round building, enormous inside, look like maybe 2 or 3 blocks, round circle, and it's divided into equal 3, into an equal triangle. And 1/3 is it says in the article, 1/3 of the building, and then when you fly over it, you can see it. It's like the peace symbol. That's why the peace symbol was the Y within the circle, okay? It was called in runic, in the old German runic, it was called the peace symbol. Anyway, the 1/3 of that building in Switzerland is the world headquarters for the United Nations. 1/3 of the other third is the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the other third is the world headquarters for Freemasonry, the Masonic World Congress. So you got the Masonic World Congress, World Government, United Nations, and the World Bank. This way they keep it all together. You don't have to go out for coffee. You can all work together, right there together, right? Yeah, it's incredible.